Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob?
I mean, some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. I am coming to you today with a very channeled message. And for those of you that are like, what does that mean? It means throughout the week, I just get inspired and I get these little ideas or these thoughts or these nudges. And it was really interesting that I received this nudge, this download through different outlets. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm supposed to talk about this, which is also interesting because I watch a lot of YouTube videos and things, and some are more spiritual, some are more focused from God and people channeling messages from God. And I'm not going to get on this soapbox too much, but I'm going to get on a little bit because I don't even want to say I struggle with needing to define things. I'm a Sagittarius, so it's like, don't ever put me in a box. But this gap between spirituality and religion has been something that I don't want to say struggled with over the past few years, but maybe that's the best way to say it. And what I find interesting is when I'm watching these different YouTube videos, and again, I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of listeners here, and that's okay. It's okay. If this doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. You listen to things, and if it resonates, awesome. And if it doesn't, awesome. That's okay. And the same thing applies here. And I'm never putting my beliefs onto anyone, but I do want to put things out there to get you to think and to question, and is this true for me? And hopefully it always gives you clarity, right? But what I have noticed is that there is a big, I don't know if stereotype is the word, around tarot readings and energy work and things like that, or the way that spiritual people channel messages. And for some reason that seems to get looked down upon or made fun of or whatever. But then I see all of these people on YouTube doing the same thing, but channeling a message from God. And it's like, aren't we all kind of doing the same thing? It's just how you are interpreting it, and what is your medium to do that, and what makes one person's way of doing it better than another's, when a lot of the spiritual people are also channeling messages from God. And so I just sit with that a lot, and I'm like, and always sitting with what comes up for me when I'm faced with those questions. And oftentimes I know for me, it's this fear of judgment from people, whether it's people in the spiritual world, be like, well, you can't be talking about God, or people that identify more with the religious aspect getting all weird about me throwing out the universe. And I was like, I just want to be connected. Anyway, so I'm sorry if you have already clicked off. That's not what today's message is about at all. But I'm just saying, when it comes to these channeled messages, I'm kind of trying to do the same thing. I'm not trying, I just am. Like, this is what comes through for me when I write things, when I speak. I am just trying to get out of my head, out of my way, and let whatever comes through come through. And I set the intention before I hit record that I'm channeling the messages for the highest of all good, and whatever God and the universe would want me to share with all of you. And so I'm really intentional about where I'm drawing that energy from, and where I'm drawing the words and the wisdom, or whatever you want to call it. I'm really intentional about where that comes from, and really setting some energetic boundaries around that. So if what I say doesn't resonate with you on this podcast or another one, like, that's okay. It doesn't mean like you have to banish me forever, but maybe you do, and that's okay. I'm not for everyone, but I just found it interesting. I don't understand why there has to be two very different camps. And I'm actually really excited about one of my future guests, because we're going to dive into that, because he was someone that really helped me feel seen in the in-between. And it's a really kind of isolating, lonely world for those of us who believe in God, but also identify with more of a spiritual aspect. And like, where do we fit in? And I've had this conversation so many times with so many people, and I know so many of you that are listening, and I know some of you that would identify more with the religious aspect. Me talking about energy and stuff has made you uncomfortable, but I love when you allow yourself to sit with it. And I love that you allow yourself to explore what that means for you and what comes up for you, and be able to explore where that originates. I've had Erica on here several times, and she is a classic example of that. And I would love for her to come on and share more of her story sometime. We talked a little about that on one of the episodes where I had a real dark moment and she swooped in to basically save me. And how that was her stepping into her gifts when before she didn't believe in that kind of stuff. And so it's really interesting, just even the growth and evolution I've seen in her. But anyway, I digress. So why this episode came about was I was cleaning up the other day. Well, first of all, it started with the whole YouTube thing, because I was just noticing, like, why is it that this is okay, but this isn't, you know? So I was sitting with that and recognizing, like, these people are just sitting in their car with their phone up and they're channeling a message from God, and they have 40,000 views. Like, what am I doing wrong over here? Like, what? Like, do I just need to completely surrender and be like, how do I need to package this where it's acceptable for people? Like, I got this whole freaking setup and these freaking mics and goddamn webcams and like, what? So I was sitting with that and I'm like, okay, because they're just doing it. They're just, no judgment, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to sit in my car, I'm going to channel this messages from God, and whoever it's for, it's for. And I was like, okay. So that was the first little seed that was planted. And then I was listening to something as I was picking up my apartment the other day, and it was talking about silence and what that really means. And I had to stop what I was doing and like take little notes, because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. And I know on my 40th episode, I shared my little frozen lake analogy. And this kind of made me think of that, and just in terms of winter. I actually went snowshoeing a couple weeks ago, and I just stood there. The sun was setting, and I just looked out at the pond that was frozen, and it was so quiet and it was so still. And I just thought, like, wow, there is so much beauty in stillness. There is so much beauty in silence. But that wasn't always the case. And I have talked about that before. I don't remember what episode, where being by myself was terrifying. And because I didn't know who I was afraid of the thoughts that would come up and all of these things. And that's what I'm going to pull up my phone and reference this, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. So true. I had to stop what I was doing and take notes, because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. This is so good. And I knew there was a reason that I felt compelled to stop and take notes, because I generally don't do that. So that was also, we're like, am I supposed to talk about this today? And so it was all about silence and what we can learn from it and gain from it. And that everybody really can view silence as different. And what we do in silence is also very different. Sometimes it's us hiding and isolating. Other times it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And I think about over the last 2 years, the times that I have been faced with silence, and looking back, what it did, and this is where some of these quotes stood out to me, was that silence exposes the cracks, but they're not meant to shame you, they're meant to show you. And I was like, oh shit, that's so true. And the other one was, their silence didn't create your insecurities, it revealed them. And I was like, damn it. Oh man, that's so spot on. So spot on. Because that's exactly what happened. That was exactly what happened when I was met with silence. It exposed so many wounds, so many cracks that I didn't know were there. And now I look back, and that silence was actually a gift, because that silence made me sit in it. That silence made me reflect on things that were coming up for myself. And that's where I was thinking about winter, like that's what winter does. And that made me think about the New Year's, and that the New Year's energy that I just talked about last week, and even putting that out, like I was kind of putting it out because that's kind of what we expect. It's the time of the year. You should talk about that. But honestly, I don't really view January 1st as the new year. Again, bringing in my spiritual stuff, I feel like we have an energetic new year and that is not here yet. But I also think in terms of the seasons. And right now, winter is about resting, reflecting, kind of hibernating, right? And so this is such a beautiful time to do that within ourselves. It's a beautiful time to take the time and be like, more of the reflection part of 2024. Like we want to jump into the action, right? But we're missing winter and spring, and we want summer, we want action, we want go and have all the fun, do all the things, but that's not really the energy that's out there right now. So we're not really working with the energy. We're actually kind of working against it. And sometimes that can be a barrier. Sometimes that can lead to sabotage because energetically, we're not going with the flow. We're not going with the seasons. It is the season, it is not. If we were to go with the seasons, this is the time for us to slow down. This is the time for us to really reflect on last year and to take that time to do it. Not to rush that just because we turn the calendar over. Is use winter for that. Allow yourself to sit in the silence and reflect. Notice the cracks. Notice the wounds. Notice opportunities for growth. It gives us an opportunity to be still. And I can know this and embrace this now because of the healing work that I've done. But again, if you would have asked me to do that several years ago, I've been like, oh, no. Give me the distractions, please. And really, when you think about it, that's kind of what spring and summer and fall, like there's more distractions. There's more things to do. So a lot of people dread winter because we have to sit with ourselves because there's nothing to do besides sit with your damn self. And no one wants to do that because it's not fun unless you embrace it as an opportunity to get ready to plant the seeds, to get ready to grow the seeds, to then harvest the seeds. But we're trying to rush the process. We want to just hurry up and get over with winter, when really this may be the most important season, is to utilize this right now and to take a step back and be like, what if I don't rush this part of the process? What if I learn to embrace the stillness and the silence of winter as a time to get really quiet with myself and find out what I actually want moving into spring? What are the seeds that I want to plant? And get really clear about that and allow yourself to flow with that energy and see if that fits better. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're all about January 1st or whatever, and you want to go and take it and run with it, and that works for you. Awesome. Great. This isn't for everyone. Like I said, take what resonates, leave the rest. But the other thing that came about, and this is where it was like a total download because I haven't heard this song. I haven't thought of this song. I don't even really know this song besides the one phrase, in the sound of silence. I could not rehearse any other lyric from that song. I just know that song. I know the energy of it. I know the darkness and the depth of it, but that's it. I couldn't. This morning, I was just walking around and all of a sudden I heard that song. Again, a channeled message, thought. And when you watch these readings or these people, that's generally what happens is they get this thought, this idea. So that's what I'm here doing today. Trying on this coat. I've been wearing this coat, but I'm just really speaking more openly about the process and how I'm trying to just go with it. But this song came through and I could have easily just let it come through and let it go out. But something about it made me pause. And I thought, I want to look up the lyrics to that. And I was like, okay, a message received. So bear with me because I actually I didn't write anything, I typed it. Because I wanted to be able to refer specifically to some of the lyrics. So I will try to edit out my breaks and when I'm going back and forth. And if you see my eyes shifting, if you're watching on YouTube, that's why. But I encourage you to pull up that song and really listen to it, and listen to it perhaps with the lyrics, because sometimes that always hits a little bit deeper. But really, it's all about embracing the stillness and healing and connecting and all of these things. But it was kind of looking at silence isn't the enemy. That is what guides us inward to heal. And that brought me right back to one of the quotes from the other day when it says, when you heal, silence feels like space, not abandonment. And I was like, oh my gosh, again, Because last year, it felt like abandonment. Silence felt like abandonment. This year, it feels like space. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, again, another kind of non-scale victory, or, how do you know you're healing? Like, that felt like healing. That felt like growth. To know that silence doesn't feel like abandonment anymore. It doesn't feel like I'm being shut out. It feels like space, whether that's for myself, whether it's for another person, whether it's for a situation, like to just give it space. And sometimes to sit in the silence can bring up what needs to come to the surface. And so the song was talking about kind of the paradox of silence in our society today. It starts off, hello, darkness, my old friend. And thinking about how darkness and silence are often misinterpreted as negative things. But it doesn't have to be. But again, ego often is scared of silence because it's like, oh shit, I don't know if I can keep all of this down. I don't know if I can hide all of this stuff if you sit in silence. Like, we need distractions. Where's the phone? Where's the people? Where's the fun? Where's the activity? Where's whatever? I need something to distract this human, because I don't want this human to think and feel things that are going to trigger this inner child I'm trying to protect over here. And that's what ego does. And so ego is actually the one that's afraid of the silence and the stillness. But your inner child is like, cometh. Let's get quiet. Let's talk. Let's connect. Your inner child's all about it. Your inner child is not afraid of the dark. Your inner child is not afraid of the silence. It wants you to go there. It needs you to go there. Another line in the song is, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening. And I was like, oh man, I feel that. And I've said on here a million times how I just can't do small talk or surface level, because it's like we're all just talking, but no one is actually speaking. We're hearing, but we're actually not listening. Ooh, I'm going to get emotional. Like, that's so real. And I have had several instances in this last couple weeks where I have felt so seen and so heard in a way that I never have before. And it like took me back to the point where I didn't even know how to handle it and almost felt uncomfortable. Like, whoa. I'm okay with seeing me that way, but like, okay. But it just makes us realize like how shallow and we just stay on the shore with people and connections and relationships, and everything is safe on the shore. Like, fuck that. Take me out to the depths. Swim with me there. I'm here for it. But it's so true, isn't it? How often are we just talking without actually speaking? How often are people in your life, like, you might be talking and you think they're listening, but they're not hearing you? And this is where sitting in that silence can allow you to actually reflect on that. Like, who are the people in my life who do that? Are there people in my life who really, truly don't hear me, even though I'm speaking directly to them? And yeah, maybe I am not speaking clearly. Maybe my own wounds are preventing me from being clear and direct. Maybe I'm hoping they can read between the lines because it's too hard for me to fully find my voice and speak my truth. But if they're not creating a safe space for you to do that, it's hard to show up that way. And so sometimes it can be a mutual energy exchange. And that's what I noticed is like when I have felt safe in someone's energy, I was much more easily able to find my voice. And when I don't feel that from people, and that's an energy thing, I can think about that from people. Oh my gosh. So this is, again, channel message. There's the download. There's the sound effect. Is a few years ago, and this was kind of in the midst of this whole spiritual awakening for me, is that people that I used to hang around with all the time, have fun with, no problem engaging with, all of a sudden, anytime I would go over and hang out and someone would ask me like how things are going or what I was doing, I couldn't speak. I would fumble over my words. I would combine words. I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, what word? So that obviously then triggered my wound of not being good enough, smart enough, whatever enough, Stuart Smalley. So people didn't like me. That was the fear, right? And so I would stop talking. I would try to hurry up. Just say what you got to say, check the box, and stop talking. But that's what was going on, is that energetically, I didn't feel safe with that person's energy for whatever reason, right? We weren't on the same channel anymore. And that was hard to accept, because it's like, this was a friend and this person didn't do anything to me. It was just all of a sudden we were on different channels, and it was really hard to connect, whether it was my own like fear of judgment or whatever. Like, I was obviously projecting a lot of stuff. I will own that. I will always own my shit. But it was very obvious. So when we think about being in tune with our bodies and what it is telling us all the time, it was so clear that energetically I did not feel safe. And therefore it completely blocked my throat from being able to speak. And so, yeah, there you go. Another line is the neon god they made. And that is really kind of reflecting on whether it's materialism or like all the technology or whatever it is, all of these distractions, and why we avoid the silence. The things we have put in place to make it easy for us to avoid the silence. So you have to be intentional about creating that, right? Because it's so easy to just have the TV on all the time in the background, or have even just having music in your ears sometimes. Music is a way for me to channel. It's a way that I meditate. So I have to be careful with that, right? Because sometimes I just need silence. And some of you may have noticed, like, I would come home and not turn anything on. I was like, I have just been sitting in silence. And it was like, that was weird, but it also felt really good. Or when I'm outside or on my paddleboard or whatever, those are moments sometimes where I need to turn the music off, or I need to turn the podcast off or whatever. Not mine. Just kidding. Keep mine on. Just kidding. But truly. But honestly, we need to sometimes create those moments and be intentional about, I need to maybe drive home from work without any music on, without talking to someone, and really just allow myself to sit in the silence. So that was one little aspect of that. But I also want to dive a little bit more into that the silence doesn't create the insecurities. It just reveals them. It reveals the wounds. But that's, again, your inner child trying to speak to you and be like, hey, come here. I need you to hear me. But it's in that silence that you can actually listen. Right? So kind of even going back to the line above. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening. Like, we do that ourselves, to our inner child. Right? How often are you saying the positive affirmations and the things, but like, are you really speaking them with the energy behind them where you truly believe them? Energetically, you feel them. You know, and when your inner child is trying to talk to you, are you actually listening? Or do you let ego swoop in, find that quick distraction, numb it, distract you, whatever, so you're not actually listening? But your inner child is trying to speak to you all the time, and it needs that silence. It needs those moments to connect. And this goes to your higher power as well. And I have said this to probably literally every coaching client I have ever had. If you don't create those moments, like, you're not going to get the downloads. You're not going to get those intuitive hits. You want the next step? Well, you need to get quiet. God's like, there are so many distractions. You're not going to hear me anyway. I need you to turn off the noise. I need you to be. I just need you to be. But you're always consuming. You're just consuming. We're consuming all the time. So you're never able to actually create, because you're not slowing down and getting quiet to where you can receive the downloads of what's next. God's been trying to, I've been trying to give you the plan, but you won't. One, you won't open your hands. Maybe you're trying to control. But you're just so distracted and so in your head, or so consumed with the outside world, that you're not even creating an opportunity to receive those downloads, because you can get those downloads, those intuitive hits, those channel messages just like me. I'm not special in that regard. I'm just tuned in, tapped in, and open. I'm an open channel. I'm like, hey, bring it. I'm here for it. I will share whatever message, and I will create those opportunities throughout the week, like I did, to notice when something stuck with me, when something caught my attention, when I wanted to take a further step and look into something. Like, I notice those things, but if I'm so distracted in my outside world, I wouldn't notice those things. I wouldn't take those extra steps. And it's so great. So Karen, she was on one of the very early episodes. I don't know if it was, maybe it was 4 or 5, 6, something like that. Or 8. It was one of the first ones. And oh my gosh, she is one. Also, I can't wait for her to come on and share more of her story. We shared some, so go back and watch her episode, but there has been so much more that has happened to her since that episode. But, you know, she goes to church. She's, you know, definitely identify with believing in God and all of those things. And so her also learning how to embrace what feels like a gift of being able to channel has been this like, oh, but it's so clear. It's so clear. And it's like, what is any different than the priest standing up there channeling that message? Is that not what they're doing? Like, why are you not able to do that? Why, like, we all have these abilities. It's just whether or not you're open to accepting them and receiving them. Right? But sometimes we have our stories like, oh, I'm not special. I'm not gifted. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm just this. I came from here. This is my story. And we block our ability to unlock the gifts that we all actually have. Everyone is intuitive. Everyone has the ability to be intuitive and have empathy and all of those things. But our conditioning and all of the stuff gets in the way, our beliefs. And that's where it's like, don't put me in a box. Because I know what feels right for me. I know what resonates to my heart and my soul and my core. And I don't need a book or a checklist to tell me how to do that. And that's just me. That's just me. And so, but it's been really, really beautiful to see her step into that. And when she channels, oh my gosh. And that's when she gets the most intuitive hits and the downloads. And for me, I like jolt, like I get struck by lightning, right? And then I was like, I make that noise. She is like, whoa, whoa, that's her. Or that's her word is, whoa, this just happened. This just came through. I'm like, yeah. But it's when she allows herself to come to those sessions unfiltered, to come to those sessions being completely vulnerable. I know this is a safe space. There's no judgment here. I can just say whatever I need to say. Whatever comes out, comes out. She knows that she can be her authentic self around me, and that allows these beautiful messages to come through. But if she was going to be worried about what I was going to think about what she did or what she said or what she ate, she's blocking that. Fear, shame, guilt, worry blocks all of that. But when she comes in as an open channel, oh, it's beautiful. And there's so much healing that happens, so much awareness. And this is where it's like, it's so clear that like she is her own healer. I am literally just mirroring back to like what just happened, what she just did. And it's such a beautiful and powerful thing. So coming back to this idea that, you know, silence creates these insecurities. No, it's just going to show you what's there, you are meant to heal in this lifetime. That's why I get really excited when people come up on obstacles or barriers, or they realize a limiting belief, or they have this major setback, and it's like, oh, because you're meant to heal this in this lifetime. Like, you can just feel it. You know, like this is coming up for you for a reason. It would stay frozen underneath the water if it weren't meant to come up for you, but it's coming up for you because you're ready. Because your inner child knows, hey, it's time to actually look at this and see this. So when you embrace the silence, you'll start to see that. And when you can see it as a gift and an opportunity, you'll start to look forward to opportunities where you can be in silence. And you will start to crave that and make it a sacred time. We think about the energy of Sundays. Isn't it just kind of quieter, more somber, more of a reflective time for people, whether you go to church or not? Like we kind of want that slow down time. So the energy of that is asking us to get quiet, asking us to be still. So that way we can start to learn who we really are. What is it that we actually want? And I know when I talked about this back on that 40th episode, that was the scary thing. Because it's all cool and exciting to like, yeah, I'm going to ask those questions, but when the answers come back and they don't match your current reality, that's where it's scary. Because now you have to make a choice. And that choice is evolve or remain the same. But that's where you ideally would feel empowered. You absolutely get to make a choice. But that choice could mean if I make this one choice, my life could completely change. And that's scary. But when you really sit with that, is that actually scarier than staying the same? Remaining the same? Really, like, take it all the way out. End of your days. What is actually scarier? If you were to remain exactly where you are, doing exactly what you're doing, living with who you're living with, or working with who you're working with, whatever it is, your health the way it is, all of a sudden that change doesn't seem so scary anymore. And this is what I find fascinating, is that oftentimes we call it the comfort zone. But how many of you are actually comfortable in that comfort zone? I'm using air quotes for those of you that are listening. There is a lot of discomfort in what people call their comfort zone. And that was absolutely me. Sure, this felt safe in many ways. Roof over my head, food on the table. But there were so many aspects of my current situation that did not feel comfortable. There was a lot of discomfort there. And the changes that I have made, even though it is incredibly uncomfortable, actually feel more comfortable. So I want you to challenge yourself and to really look at that. What would I define? Maybe you make a little bubble or a little circle and like, okay, here's the comfort zone, and write all the things right now in your life. The job that you get the steady paycheck, the relationship you get to come home to every night, or whatever it is, like writing all of those things down, the things that feel comfortable, the routines, the foods that you eat, like, well, this is just my normal. This is what I do. This feels comfortable. And then really look at that and sit with that. And are those things within the comfort zone actually bringing me comfort or discomfort? Are the food choices that I'm making? Are the relationships that I have in my life? Is my current job? I mean, we could extrapolate this to a million different things. Am I actually sitting in discomfort? In what I'm calling the comfort zone? And I will never forget when I was leading Nutrition for the Soul, one of the women was talking about a work environment and how it was incredibly toxic. And she was saying all of these things that were happening to her, like verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and all of these things, but she felt comfortable there. And then it hit her. And this is one of those beautiful moments where you are holding space for someone and they make their own connection and their own realization. And this is so powerful as a coach to be able to stand back and let this happen instead of jumping in and trying to be that. Is all of a sudden she sits in it, and letting her sit in the silence allowed that to happen. All of a sudden she goes, oh my gosh, I guess I'm comfortable being abused. Ooh. And I'm not just feeling, this is like an empath thing, is that I'm not just feeling that for me, I'm feeling that for anyone listening, that just hit home with, that hit you hard with, whatever that means to you. I'm feeling that for you right now. Is that we are comfortable being abused, taken advantage of, neglected, abandoned, whatever. It's just because what we're used to. Like, look up the definition of trauma bond. Hello? Why is that our comfort zone? And this is why this work is so important, because no one deserves to live in a comfort zone that feels like that. Whatever that word brings up for you, whether that's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, energetic abuse, that should not be our comfort zone. And I am challenging you while also sending you so much love and support to sit in silence with that if that hit you as hard as it just hit me. Because I'm feeling that with you and for you, and I will move through that with you. Whew, all right, that one came. Again, you're witnessing what goes on over here. Ooh, that was real. Wow. Whew, okay. So allowing yourself to sit in that silence and recognizing and even naming our fears, our insecurities, but also your desires. And sometimes that's the even scarier thing, right? Is because deep down we do have hopes and dreams and desires, but they feel like they're way out there and unachievable. And it's just easier to not allow yourself to think that they're possible because that fear of failure is too much. And so sometimes we won't even allow ourselves to daydream anymore. We won't allow ourselves to think of the best case scenario. We think of a million, what if this goes wrong? What if this happens? What if they say this? What if they whatever? What if it goes right? What if it's the best decision you ever made? What if it's the biggest leap of faith in the right direction you've ever made? What if you get your dream job? What if it changes your life? What if you meet the love of your life? What if you... Right? Why can't we switch that? You have to be intentional about switching that. And that is something, again, over the last couple of weeks, I have been faced with that. And there was one instance where it was so cool that there wasn't any fear around this decision. I intuitively knew, for me, the what if was, what if you don't do this? And my instant reaction was I would regret it. I would feel like I missed out on an opportunity. It wasn't the, what if you invest in this and you lose all your money? What if this tanks? What if this botches? I didn't have any of that. It was truly, the first thought was, what if you don't do this? And I was like, I would regret it. I could just feel it. Like, I know I would feel like I missed out on an opportunity to literally change my life. And I'm not willing to do that. I have no idea what's going to happen a month from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But I have sat with myself enough to know that that is my highest self and God and the universe saying, jump, leap. We got you. We see what's ahead for you. You don't. We do. You just need to trust in that. So I'm like, all right. And it's that whole quote. There's a saying, this little girl's on the edge and it says, what if I fall? And it's like, darling, but what if you fly? And that is 100% how I'm coming into this year. But at the same time, I have had fears come up. And because you guys you're like in my inner circle. But if you're just joining for the first time, welcome to my life. And that I've been open on here that I'm going through separation. And it's not uncommon for people to ask me about dating and all of those things. And while that hasn't been on my radar because I'm going through my own shit and I want to heal these very apparent things that I need to be working on because I don't want to bring that into another relationship. I don't want to repeat those patterns. I don't want to get those tests again. And while I know that there is a certain level of healing you can do on your own, and then once, you enter in a relationship or you start connecting with people, that's going to bring up a whole other slew of things. I was like, so even just the conversation around dating brought up some shit. And I had to sit with it in silence. I had to sit with what was coming up for me because I felt the like this lump in my throat and this pit in my stomach that just made me, and again, pay attention to your body. Your body will tell you. Is that thought of actually doing that and stepping out there, putting myself out there was like, I kind of curled in like a fetal position. Like I need to be safe. I need to protect myself. Like my body language was very clear and very apparent that, oh boy. So I was like, okay, I noticed this. There is a block here. There is something going on here. And I had to sit with it. And at first, it was surface level stuff. I was like, okay, well, it's because, things aren't finalized and so I'm not necessarily ready that way. Or, yeah, there was, again, some surface level things that seemed like obvious reasons why. But then when I sat in a little bit more silence, then I was like, oh, there it is. There it is. Because everyone kept saying, Tami, it's just a date. It's just a date. But for some reason, it didn't feel like that for me. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't see it as just a date. And then it hit me. And that the only 2 times in my life that I had actually dated ended in very long-term relationships. One was a high school relationship that ended very toxic because it went on way too long, because I had completely lost who I was in that relationship. That was, I've talked about that in high school, I think on the very first episode, of just, I became a complete shell of myself, completely lost who I was. And that turned into the spiral into college, where then I was emotional binge eating to like numb this pain of not actually knowing who I was, and had complete codependency, and that got stripped away. And so now I'm just like, fuck, I wasn't ready to see me. I wasn't ready to do that work. And so I ate to numb any and all of that pain. And I gained 40 pounds as a result, just like that. I call it the Junior 40. And then obviously my marriage and being with this person for almost 20 years. And while there were so many wonderful aspects of that and a lot of growth and a lot of healing, there were certainly aspects of that or a time period where I lost myself. And I know a lot of moms can relate to this. When you become a mom, like, I lost myself in motherhood. And it was a slow process. But at the same time, I actually never really knew who I was. So to be fair, did I lose myself? Or did I went into both of those not ever truly knowing who I was? And when there started to be this disconnect, it made me sit in more silence. That made me start to see, oh, wow. Again, what felt comfortable was actually no longer comfortable. And it was showing me my own wounds, my own insecurities. And that's where like I took full ownership of my role in our marriage ending. I could see very clearly how my childhood wounds were blocking me in being able to truly connect and being able to communicate my needs and all of these things. You know, and that work, you need to be able to do that work together. Or you hope that you can. So I recognized that dating to me meant you are signing a very long-term commitment that will lead to you losing who you are. I was like, oh shit. So I have realized I am committed to a fault. Like, we have committed people and, you know, people that can't commit to anything. And I was like, oh, I commit to a fault to the point where I lose myself. And I think about this even with exercise. Like, I'm so committed that I might work out through an injury. I'm much, much better at that now. But I may not get as much sleep. So there are things where I get real committed to a fault. And that was something where like, oh my gosh. So I realized like I have to change my story around dating, because to me, dating felt like a death sentence to who I am now. And there's no way I am losing this version of me now. Never again. But that felt scary and too risky. And so I was like, nope. Not even realizing this was a subconscious block that doesn't actually mean that's what's going to happen, Tami. You're not that person anymore. But I needed to feel like really secure in that, like, okay, like I know who I am and I'm not going to lose that. I'm going to be able to speak up and speak my truth. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm there yet, if I'm ready for that, if I trust myself. Actually, this was something that I literally just wrote out the other night that hit me, is that I have healed enough to feel safe within myself by myself. I don't know if I feel safe within myself around someone else, even if that person themselves feels safe. And that was my people pleaser coming through, like, because I don't know if my people pleaser would let me speak up and say my truth, or like, hey, I'm actually not feeling this, or I'm not ready yet, or whatever. Could I do that? And that's where it didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe inside of myself, even though there was a safe space being created around me. It was like, So again, being able to sit in that silence allowed me to recognize those things about myself. And now I can go to work on them. But if I just completely avoided going there, I wouldn't have made that connection. And I'm going to die an 80-year-old cat lady. No offense if that's you. You enjoy your cats. Oh, so like I could be denying myself these really cool experiences of learning new people and experiencing things or whatever because of my own fears and my own blocks. And so that's why this work is so important. And that's why it's so crucial to allow yourself to be still and to sit in silence and to use the energy of winter right now to do that and allow yourself to do that. Because it's allowing you to get into that self-discovery, to strip away the external, right? Because there isn't much to do in winter, going outside unless you're into winter sports. There ain't a whole lot to do. So it's trying to like take away the distractions so we can do that thing and hopefully reveal our authentic desires, our values, who we truly are. But again, that's scary if acknowledging that requires change. But that's why it's important to do this work, because if your inner child can feel safe and your ego can feel safe doing that work, it's much easier. I moved through a lot of that stuff pretty quickly. Granted, it was years of buildup, but because I have created a safe foundation within myself, my inner child and ego were willing to let me explore it, willing to let me sit in silence, where I didn't feel the need to grab some food or turn on Netflix or scroll on my phone. Like, no, you need to sit in this, go for a walk. On New Year's Eve night, for those of you that follow me on social media, you might have saw my little video I made. I had the best time. I had the best time having a date with myself. I said, I'm spending the night with the love of my life, me. And I meant that. I truly meant that, and that felt so good. Felt so good to know that I was worthy of getting dressed up and feeling good. Oh, shit, I'm gonna cry again. Treating myself to a nice meal, turning on music and dancing and being that energy. Like I didn't need someone there to feel worthy of that experience, to feel worthy of getting fancy on a New Year's Eve night. Like I can do that within myself and feel that for myself. But it was so funny of how that just weirded some people out. Like, what are you doing, weirdo? Like, am I the weird one, or is that weird that you find that weird and uncomfortable? Okay. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. But once I was going to say the party was over, but let's be honest, there was a party of one, and, just the energy was dipping. And I just wanted to curl up in a blanket, and I got my journal out and I wrote some things. So I allowed myself, again, there was no more music playing, and I just allowed myself to sit in silence and journal. And then I closed my journal and I just sat there and I just laid there, curled up on my blanket, and kind of allowed myself to feel loved and nurtured and comforted by me. And that was such a beautiful night of witnessing my own growth and my own healing. And also like, okay, you've gotten this far, and that's awesome and that's great. But maybe it is time to start thinking about, what does that next level look like? Who do you let into your energetic space? And I'm very, very protective of that now. Because I've worked hard for this peace. I've worked hard for this healing. And I've been bulldozed and blindsided, whether it was with job opportunities or things where like I went in all like optimistic and things, and just, ooh, there was another lesson, there was another test. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go in on with a little different energy, not completely guarded. And this is where I've also asked God and the universe to be the ones to protect my heart and my energy, so that way I can try to be more open and allow myself to be open to receive, trusting that they got me. They got me. They can protect me, so I don't need my ego to, because when my ego protects me, it overprotects to where it blocks me from my blessings, and it blocks me from gifts, and it blocks me from receiving love and kindness and all of those things that people are actually out there to give. And so that's another example of surrender, right? And so thinking about ways, as I'm kind of wrapping some of this up, to embrace stillness. How can you create those moments? And it can be just a couple minutes in the morning. It can be at your lunch break of, you know what, I'm just going to step outside of the break room and just do a lap around the parking lot without music, without listening to podcasts, without answering emails. Like, can I just give myself that moment? And sometimes, again, the car drive home, if you commute, is a great time to do that because then you don't have any other distractions, right? And you can really sit with your day. And that's a great time to process your emotions from the day. So that way you're not taking them into your home and then spewing them all over your family or your kids, and bringing your shitty energy from work into that space. Keeping that your Zen den that Erica so beautifully referred to it as could be a great practice. I've talked about the outside every day. Like, that was a great time to just turn it all off and allow myself to get still and quiet and connect. Maybe it's that moment in the morning, the alarm goes off before you hop out of bed, before you check your phone, is you just maybe put your hands on your heart and you just allow yourself to sit in silence for a minute with just gratitude, with praying, with meditating, whatever, just taking a deep breath and being grateful for your body and that you woke up and you get another day and whatever it is, or right before bed. Just, you have to be intentional about it. That's the key, is we have to be intentional about it and welcome in those moments of silence. Because when you do, when we use this time, then winter starts to thaw, and then now it's time to plant the seeds. Now you have clarity on what you want. Because there's going to be weeds popping up all over the place. We all know how that works. You have this beautiful idea of this garden that you want to plant, or these flowers that you want to plant. And fuck, there's weeds all over the place and you're constantly pulling them. Yeah, you're going to need to, and you have to be intentional about that when that time comes. So use this time now to be really clear about what is it that I want to plant, because that time is coming and I want to be ready. Because this is one of my favorite quotes. I actually have a shirt I was going to wear today that referred to seeds and thoughts. I'm like, oh no, I'll save that to, closer to spring. But I will reference this quote now and probably again later, is that your thoughts are like seeds. You can plant flowers or you can plant weeds. So this is a really good time to not just think of it as your thoughts, but it's your energy, it's your wounds, it's all of those things. Like, use this time now because they are the seeds that you are about to plant. And you have to be intentional and make a choice about what it is that you want to plant. Because if you just go out in the spring and you just throw everything out there, you haven't really nurtured that soil from the year before and you really haven't tended to that, you don't know what's going to pop up. You don't know what's going to grow. And pretty soon those weeds can take over some of those beautiful intentions you did have because you weren't willing to do the work, to look at the cracks, to look at the wounds, to use this time to heal. Because if you can use this time to really heal, look at those insecurities and see what your inner child is trying to tell you through them, you're not going to need to worry about accidentally planting those and then having them pop up all throughout the summer. And if they do, you'll notice it and like, oh, that's a weed. Nope. Oh, that's a childhood wound. I can address that. I didn't feel seen. This is why. How can I make myself seen? Done. Boom. You just move through the process so much faster. Like, I get triggered all the time still, but I move through it so much more smoothly, so much more quickly, and I learn so much more quickly of how, oh, that's why that happened for me. Boom. Moving on. Next level, please. So I'll kind of wrap this up here. I think I said that earlier, but felt like there was another. Ooh, yes. I get a little excited sometimes. It sounded like the wrong kind of excitement there. Or was it right? Okay, officially wrapping up on that. We're getting a little too personal now. Well, that's all right. But another lyric or another line from this song is, the words of prophets are written on the subway walls. And this is, again, talking about wisdom can emerge in the most unexpected places if you're tuned in. And that's why don't box it up on how you receive the messages. Let it come through. Maybe it comes through a YouTube video. Maybe you're on Instagram and you see something pop up, and allow that message to come through when it sits with you, when you notice it, and when you resonate with it, when it draws your attention and it draws you in and you can't stop thinking about it. Sit with that and don't judge where it comes from. Because if we always judge a book by its cover and like, well, I can't trust that person. Sometimes the most unexpected person will say the most profound things. My kids say the most profound things. So I can think about that as my kids. Sometimes my kids are the freaking prophets. Like, damn, you just dropped one on me. But I have to be attuned to that. I have to be able to notice that and let it hit me and then sit with it. So be open to where your messages come from. And maybe it's not how they always used to. Maybe that's not how society says they should. Is it coming from the tarot reader on YouTube? But man, that message, it was like they were talking directly to me. Maybe that's the way God had to get through to you. Was it the person in the car channeling God's message? Maybe. Was it at church? Maybe. Is it through this podcast? Maybe. You don't have to judge it. Just allow yourself to sit with what this feels like for me. Do I feel constricted when I hear it? Do I feel liberated when I feel it? Do I feel open when I hear it? Pay attention to you and to your body and to your energy. And that is your guide, because we're always getting those messages, whether it's from your inner child, from your highest self, from God, the universe, whatever it is. But sometimes you have to be quiet and allow yourself to sit in the silence to be able to see that as a companion on your journey rather than some adversary, rather than some villain, rather than some scary thing. And so if I were to create some sort of challenge, maybe the silence challenge, like, can you allow yourself to sit in the silence? Can you create those little moments? And what comes up for you when you do? And so I would love for you to comment on this episode if something resonated with you. I would love to hear if you are, maybe that's a resolution. It's like, you know what? I want to create a moment of silence. I want to create those moments throughout my day. You know, and this is one of those things where it can come in like on a daily, maybe it's something really small. Maybe it's just a couple minutes. But maybe on the weekends, you create space for more of that. And that's Sundays for me. Like, I don't want to talk to anyone on Sundays. Like, I tend to work all day on Sundays, but that's also when I try to go out and do a bigger walk or when I would paddleboard. Like, those are the days that I wanted to create a bigger opportunity for silence. But I certainly create them all throughout my day, every day. But I kind of want that big chunk where I can really dig in and really do some deep reflection. And so it can look different, and it can look different every day. But it's just being intentional about it every day. So on that note, I will wrap it up. I encourage you to pull up that song, listen to it, sit with it, feel it, allow the energy of that song, see what comes up for you, and then get quiet to see what messages come through for you. Because that's a channeled message for you, from God, from the universe, from your inner child, speaking to you, directly to you. You also have that gift. All right, on that note, please get quiet at some point for your inner child. See what he or she has to say to you. Until next week, see you later.